the senator, while indoctrinated, could not explain his toxicity.
You should not listen to men's rights advocates if you...
Coming to you live from deep within a windy and rainy and also sometimes sunny radioactive meme land. We are the survivors of the alt-right keck-apocalypse. The errors, they just keep compounding and multiplying. The few, the brave, the bitchy, once more wading into battle against the lobster hordes with Rantzerker. Number 115, Sargon versus the BBC and the specter of the dread rape anti-threat. Karen.
Yes.
I would not even rape you.
Oh, I wouldn't even talk to you.
Oh!
I wouldn't even be in the same room with you, Alison. Yeah. So take that.
Yeah. Well,
don't you feel bad now?
Well, obviously, Karen has just threatened me with harassment and assault by saying she wouldn't even talk to me and she wouldn't even be in the same room with me.
That's right. That's how the anti-threat works.
That's how the BBC logic works.
Okay.
And as a bonus, I have created a new bingo card. This is fake news bingo. So we're going to be responding to, we'll talk about the arguments that are being made by Sargon. And, you guys know how journalists are. So when journalists say something that we pretty much sure will get us a little token on the old bingo card, I'll be sure to mark it, and let's see if we get bingo on our fake news bingo card. So it's a bit of a mix.
Yeah, but before we get into it, like for the people who are just following along, maybe we should indicate the categories. So this is the fake news bingo card starting from the top right, far right, alt right.
That's why I put it on the right, by the way.
Yeah, next square, online harassment. Next,
that's actually on the left.
Oh yeah, the left. Sorry. What the hell?
It's on the cards. It's on the cards right, though. No, but go ahead. It's the cards right, not our right. Go ahead. All right.
So far right, alt right, is the first square, and then online harassment, and then begging the question, and there is no bias. Words lead to violence, and this is the second row. Avoiding questions, orange man bad. Invoke female victims. I think we're going to get a lot of play out of that one. Some sources claim. Anecdotal evidence. Third row. The polls say you hurt people's feelings. Lies.
That's the free space.
Conspiracy theory. Lies is the free space.
Lies is the free space, yeah.
Fourth row, joke analyst. So you're saying appeal to the mob, appeal to authority. Wow. Just wow. And the final row is freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences. Leading question. Context doesn't matter. Brexit. Hate speech isn't free speech. And that, my friends, is our bingo card. Shall we roll the balls? Or whatever the heck it is they do.
I don't know. You turn you crank the thing.
There's a cage, and you rotate it, and like a little ball comes out a little trap door.
Yeah.
And then you read it out. So yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, let's rotate our cage of cap.
Let's jump to the first. Yeah, we're gonna jump to the first clip. If you guys haven't seen it, I'll play the little 30-second setup that just kind of introduces the topic. So.
Last week, we revealed that the police were investigating whether a UKIP candidate in the forthcoming European elections committed an offence when he said this about the Labour MP Jess Phillips in a video now taken down by YouTube.
Oh, I just want to say before we continue, this is going to seem like you're watching a Monty Python sketch, but she's actually very serious. So let's keep going.
There's been an awful lot of talk about whether I would or would not even rape Jess Phillips. I've been in a lot of trouble for my hardline stance of not even raping her. I suppose with enough pressure, I might cave. But let's be honest, nobody's got that much beer.
Oh, sick burn. right? And so, like, the idea that like anybody could consider that like a credible threat is absolutely fucking retarded. I'm sorry. It's like he literally says, "Yeah, I might, but yeah, no, I wouldn't because there's not enough beer in the world," right? Um, uh, and Alison had a beautiful comeback to it when somebody brought that up. She said, "How dare Carl Benjamin joke about Jess Phillips raping him?"
Yeah.
Because if he'd had that much beer, right,
Yeah.
she'd be raping him.
Exactly. There's not
So-
enough beer in the world to render Carl Benjamin unconscious enough not to fight back for that.
Yeah,
not to fight
resist.
Jess Phillips off.
Well,
Yeah.
there's also not enough beer in the world to make it to where Carl Benjamin could actually be raped by a woman, legally speaking.
Well, legally speaking in the UK, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's actually that point is going to come into play.
Mhm.
That's what's so great about this entire BBC episode.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's get into the first actual, like you could say, hot take. By the way, this thing starts right off, and there's so many that I had to narrow it down. So
The Labour MP told us about the impact that those comments had on her.
I'd been putting a brave face on it and pretending that it was all fine and that I could cope. And it sort of dawned on me that for 4 years, essentially, this man has made a career out of harassing me, and I felt harassed. I felt like, how can somebody
I
say
think you know.
that they
Here's the
would?
thing. Here's the thing. She's an MP. She's a politician. She's in the public eye. She is not exempt from people airing their grievances with her or criticizing her and things like that, right? But on top of that, she essentially, like just a week ago, she tweeted something like, "Imagine being Carl from Swindon, with that kind of upper crust." He's from Swindon, right? The yob. But imagine being Carl from Swindon and realizing that your entire career revolves around me, right?
what?
As in,
Yeah, I know.
no, she literally tweeted that here's a man whose entire career will, like, the only reason he's known is because of her, which is complete bullshit, right?
Yeah.
But she was bragging about it. She was essentially saying, "Yeah, no, take that," right? The only reason anybody has heard your name, the only reason anybody who's has ever heard of you is because of me, and you're just going to have to live with that, you little tiny little man. Essentially, is what she said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It doesn't sound like
yeah.
she's that completely and utterly shattered by this entire exchange.
No,
And also, I love the shit-eating grin she has when she's, "I'm so harassed."
I know, eh?
I mean,
you can
really.
tell when she's really grinning because you can see the gums above her upper teeth.
I mean, really, could you just, if you're going to say that, if you're going to say this is a horrible thing that happened to me, and you're not making some sort of wry point about it, which you're not, maybe
No,
you should not grin about it. Not look
Yeah.
like you're eating a bucket of Duper's Delight.
Yeah, no, it's like she's literally got that cat just ate the canary look, right? And she's like, "Okay, let's see if we can really pull one over on the
Yeah,
flip."
let's see
right?
if we can get away with this. Let's see if
It's
we can
interesting that
slip this in.
when you go back to when the original tweet was made, like back when this whole thing started, and he did the whole
4
"I
years
wouldn't
ago?
Yeah, Jess Phillips said in an interview that she doesn't care. She didn't care about it. She didn't even, like, it was brought to her attention, right?
Yeah,
It
it
wasn't
didn't
like-
bother her.
No,
It didn't
she
bother
said it
her
didn't
because-
bother her. She said, this is part and parcel of the job. I don't care. I just, I spent the day with my kids. It's not a big deal. And now that I think, because he's sort of like, involved with the UKIP thing, and the press they've been digging this up and milking it for all it's worth, this one tweet. Now she's on there saying, it kind of dawned on me, I am a victim, actually.
Yeah. No, and it's it's hilarious too, right? Because it's like, she essentially said, she woke up to, 600 notifications on
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, right? None of those were from Carl Benjamin because she'd already blocked him,
Yeah.
right?
Can I just,
So
before you continue, I just want to give out to the listeners who might not understand the context. The original tweet that Jess Phillips has destroyed her world was Carl Benjamin saying, "I wouldn't even rape you."
yeah, and he was saying it. He tweeted a link to a video of his, and in that video, he was talking about how Jess Phillips was helping to spearhead a multi-partisan campaign called Take Back the Internet, which was designed to essentially police speech. They were actually trying to lobby the government to police speech on the internet because ma rape.
Mm-hmm.
And he, of course, took his free speech stance on that and essentially said, there's no one you can trust to essentially be the person who decides what people can and can't say on the internet. So yeah, no, this is not okay. And so he tweeted his video, a link to his video discussing that topic, and said, at Jess Phillips, I wouldn't even rape you.
Yep.
And then people, and here's the thing too, she had him blocked. So even people who were retweeting it at her, who were not blocked by her, she would not have been able to see the tweet unless they took a screenshot or something, or she logged out and had a look. Because at that time you could log out and have a look, right? So she would not have had, like, it blew up in the press. All the blue check marks lost their frickin' minds, and that's the only reason she even heard about this yob from Swindon pledging to never rape her.
Yep.
Which she took as an insult, because it's like, oh, I'm not attractive enough to rape, apparently, right?
Well, but it's actually even more. If you actually unpack what that insult so-called means, it's an insult on this idea that all men, any man, would rape a woman if given a chance.
Well, yeah, and it's also a riff on the idea that, like, because Carl, actually, I talked to him about it, and he said, I agonized over the word even, right? I did, right? But I was essentially like, what I wanted to do was put out a pledge to not do something and have the media pick it up and claim that it was an actual threat to do the very thing I had pledged not to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they fell for it. They took the bait. That's what they do.
Yeah, and they keep falling for it. It's like, really, a while back I had this existential crisis over the OK symbol, because I realized that 4chan is now defining language and symbols. And I'm sure that 4chan does not want to actually be in a position to define language and symbols, and they're just making a point about media overreaction. But it's like, if we are seeing this much fractionalism in how we define language and symbols, we're basically at another Tower of Babel situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't say that 4chan is trying to change language. I think 4chan is trying to show us how the media and social media, Silicon Valley, etc., how they have the ability to change language, because they essentially are the ones that give meaning to the symbols that 4chan jokingly says. 4chan puts out a troll saying, let's say that the OK symbol is a symbol of white power, and let's see what they say. And instead of ignoring it, they actually give the symbol power by not shutting up about it and finding it everywhere. When 4chan came up with that, it had no power whatsoever. But what they were doing is saying, if we put this out there, the media is going to give this power. And they gave it so much power that people were losing their jobs for doing it. That people like, were on Tim Pool's on the Joe Rogan Experience trying to explain to Joe Rogan what the circle game is. And Joe Rogan saying, I'm pretty sure it's a white supremacist. Only because the media ran with it. Not because 4chan came up with it. Because 4chan can come up with whatever they want. But unless it's picked up and ran with by the media and then shared with the world, which I'll get into why that is the case, because that comes up in this very discussion about the power of language, which the journalist, for lack of a better word, tries to throw at Carl as a way to like get him as a gotcha, but it doesn't work.
It's like when Oprah. Does anybody else remember Oprah?
Yeah.
Saying. Reading from the post on her forum from the notorious pedophile ring, where they said we have over 9,000 penises and they're all raping children.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like she took it completely seriously. I don't blame her because she doesn't fucking know what over 9,000 is. She doesn't know anything like that.
Yeah.
But she got punked.
Yeah, but she also didn't stop and say, wait a minute, that sounds ludicrous.
Maybe sounds we should weird.
Yeah, let me find out if this is legit, or let me try to get more info. And she could have learned that it was, but
it's like when my son God, what did he say? He said that the guy, the Fortnite guy, what's his name?
Ninja?
Yeah, Ninja. Well, he told me somebody. Oh, maybe it was Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson's just been diagnosed with ligma.
Oh, ligma. Right? Yeah, ligma.
Ligma, and I'm like, so he texts me this, right? Oh my God, Jordan Peterson's just been diagnosed with ligma, and I just responded, I have Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he texted me back in all caps, Ligma balls!
Yeah.
Son. I want to put something out there, though. Here's a pro tip for the world of the future, the world of tomorrow. If something engages your outrage, look deeper.
Google first.
Yeah, look deeper. Like if you're immediately reacting with outrage, you're about to be made a fool of. And I think that's what the real issue is here. The individuals who are reacting with outrage, they need to double down and triple down and quadruple down because they're actually afraid of being found out for fools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
They're terrified of being humiliated. The BBC is terrified of being humiliated. The MSM is terrified of being humiliated. So they're going to use whatever power they have to prevent that from happening, even if that includes destroying the world.
Yeah.
Or at least one yob from Swindon, and a dude in Scotland, and a guy whose name shall not be mentioned, but whose initials are TR, who grew up in Luton. His real initials, because they always say his real name they're invoked like it's the reverse Voldemort thing, right? If we actually say his name, then his real name, his true name, Rumpelstiltskin.
Mitzelplick.
Then we'll have power over him.
I wonder if I qualify in that list because of that stupid, we're infiltrating a convention disguised as ourselves because, we don't want to get kicked out as space lepers.
Yeah.
And then the absolute stone cold serious interpretation of that is a legitimate intention to infiltrate a convention by
I know.
media.
I just wonder how the Onion hasn't been sued to death over their their slandering of Planned Parenthood as wanting to open a giant abortion plex in frickin' Michigan with punch cards to so 9 abortions, your 10th one is free, and you can get your abortion, and then there's like nail salons and stuff around and all kinds of shopping, so you can like make it a day trip, go to the spa, go to the nail salon, go
your hair did.
Buy a new skirt, get your hair done, have your abortion. Oh my goodness, absolutely great, right? That they wrote an article essentially saying that it was going to be like a $2 billion abortionplex or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
It's pretty
Let's
dark.
that's
It is really dark, but like I don't think it was satire. I think that they were just slandering Planned Parenthood, and Planned Parenthood should sue them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because
let's
jokes.
Yeah, jokes are not allowed.
Yeah.
They're dangerous. What are you talking about? What are jokes? Okay, so let's move on to the next soundbite.
An individual that might end up, if elected, representing victims of rape in the southwest region of the country.
Yes, and I spoke to a victim of rape very recently, and in one of the street interviews that I've been doing, she thanked me for being able to take the power back from such a terrible experience. By owning it herself and being able to make jokes about the subject, it doesn't control her. And this is the thing that I'm very concerned about. Like Jess Phillips said, this was some kind of coercive control. Well, not by me. She hasn't seen the video.
I'm pausing for the banana there. I'm going to play the rest of the clip now.
She didn't even see the...
Yeah.
She hasn't seen the video. Of course not. She's not going to.
No.
I mean, the thing is that with a banana is that it's more of a fruit salad than a banana. It actually has to hear at least 2 different voices or it will trigger the copyright.
What if you're
if it's copyrighted?
What if you're a YouTuber that's just one person and you do a banana?
Well, I don't know. I guess you have to develop 2 separate voices.
No, because I've watched a video by Sinatra Says, and he's just one guy, and he's done that with videos too. And as far as I know, he doesn't. Well, whatever.
It might be a live thing.
You've said something, so there it is.
The original tweet.
Jess Phillips says it's harassment.
Yeah, but by journalists.
Told us you are harassing her.
By journalists.
She feels harassed by what you have said.
She didn't see anything that I said. It's journalists like you who put that in front of her face. You're the ones coercively controlling her by making sure she can't get away from it.
Okay, that's a bingo, I think. Well, not like a bingo, but we have something on the old bingo card. I believe harassment is on here. Let me see. Oh yeah, online harassment. We got that. Let me see if there was anything else. No, not yet. We're gonna come back to that. So that was the clip, by the way. Any thoughts on that? I like the bit where he says that he spoke to a woman and that essentially she thanked him as a rape victim herself because it allowed her to joke about it. So essentially, what he's making the case for is that, you know, if you can make light of a situation, no matter how dark it is, it'll allow you to move on. And of course, the BBC woman thinks that this is just like unbelievable.
Oh, well, that's because as long as if victims can recover, then they're no longer useful to her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wants to preserve them in a pristine state of having been raped. You see, joking about rape is completely verboten. What you really need to do is take a rape victim, pickle them, and put them in a jar in just the moment of greatest trauma so they can never escape it. And then you bring them out whenever they're of use to your rhetorical points and you shake them in people's faces. And that's how you're supposed to use rape and rape victims. You're not supposed to create humor around rape. I mean, that might get rape victims the idea that they can overcome their rape and get out of the state of trauma. That's not right, because that makes them not useful to Victoria's narrative. And it doesn't matter that staying in a state of trauma means that they're basically being raped over and over and over again. Victoria thinks that's the appropriate way that we should deal with rape victims. We should keep them in a state of constantly being raped. Raped by the world, raped by words, raped by people's innocuous actions. Just keep them being raped over and over and over again. That should be their only experience for the rest of their lives. And they should never have any kind of tool to overcome or minimize rape, because God forbid they feel stronger than a traumatic event that had happened to them. That would make them not useful to Victoria and to feminists and to all of the people who are pushing this victimhood narrative. Because what they want, the role that they want women to occupy, is the role of victim. And how do I know that? Because I spoke out against it, and guess what? I got ostracized. They tried to destroy me.
They claimed they were victimized by you.
I know. And this is the role that our society and feminism expects of women. And when you don't occupy that role, you're going to get shit. You're going to get shit on like a ton of bricks. And it's this exact same thing. Victoria doesn't care about rape victims. She cares about preserving rape as a weapon to use against other people, which, interestingly enough, sort of makes her a rapist.
Kind of, sort of, like a metaphorical, psychological one, yes?
I have a couple super chats, and then we will move on. Lauren literally, thank you, Lauren, gives us $19.99 and says, if the idea of male rape victims was never a thing to be laughed at, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Because like I said, if Jess was Justin, no one would be talking about this tweet. It's interesting that you sent that tweet, that message out, because there is something that happens here that I think is quite interesting that I want to draw attention to when it comes up. Blave Kaiser gives us $5 and says, been a while since I've listened to you guys live. I usually just listen on the weekends. Here's some shekels. Stay strong, keep calm, and badger on. Well, thank you, Blave Kaiser and Lauren, for your kind donations. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next clip here. And, well, let's get into this.
YouTube have taken down your video. West Midlands Police are investigating to see if an offence has taken place. Could I ask you a really personal question?
Sure.
Have you been raped?
I've been sexually assaulted.
Is that the first time?
All right, real quick about this. It's interesting that Sargon said he was sexually assaulted, and it begs the question, because I don't know the story about this, okay? But it does make me wonder, is Sargon saying he's been sexually assaulted because what he experienced technically wasn't rape by any universal standard? Or was Sargon sexually assaulted because, as written by the letter of the law, because he's a man, he cannot be raped? So a woman, or at least by the definition, yeah, like maybe as it was written in British law, what would count as a sexual assault for him might count as a rape for a woman. Just something I'm asking, just putting out there.
Yeah, no, it's like I'm guessing, right, that his sexual assault is probably along the lines of being groped in a bar or something like that. That's Jess Phillips's sexual assault. She had her boobs grabbed in a bar, in a pub, right? And she holds that up as some kind of like that's her freaking, that's the cross she nails herself to when she, wants to actually like speak with authority on issues of misogyny and sexual violence and all of that stuff, right? She once had her boobs grabbed in a bar, right? And it's just like, I'm sorry, but if that's enough to like shatter your psyche, then like that's something that should be responded to with, like shove the guy out, away from you, slap him across the face, tell him to fuck off, give him the finger, walk away, continue partying, right? Like that's most people's reaction to that kind of thing. And yes, it's not right to just grab some woman's boobs in a freaking pub. That's not okay. But the level of weight that she puts on that, to essentially put her, and that's what inspired me to do years and years of volunteer work, with female victims of male violence, male sexual and domestic violence, and blah, blah, blah. That's what inspired me to do it. And it's like, I'm just thinking to myself, give me a fucking break, right? Like, I wish that my sexual assault was just as something as trivial as having my boob grabbed. Yeah.
Well, maybe he has much worse, and it is like
and maybe
Brian
he
said.
does, but maybe it's just something like that. But regardless, under the law, right? Whatever it is he's talking about under the law, I'm sure it would qualify as sexual assault. I don't know Carl to be a liar. I don't know him to be somebody who embellishes the truth.
Yeah, but here, what Brian is saying is that
he could have been raped, and
under the
say
law,
that it was sexual assault because under the law it doesn't qualify as rape.
Yeah, or at the very least,
to a man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. exactly.
So it really is like, if a woman says, I've been sexually assaulted, you know that it probably doesn't include rape. If a man says it in the UK, you don't know, because the UK doesn't deign to actually consider men to have been raped.
Dane.
Okay.
Dane.
Dane.
Yes.
Like the nationality, the Danes.
Yeah, DEIGN, Dane.
I think there's an E, but regardless. So yeah, and what's interesting is, and I've watched this before, I think the next exchange is really telling too. Go for it, Brian.
I'll continue the rest of this. Yeah. Okay.
Do you usually ask people if they've been raped? Do you find that an appropriate question?
I appreciate it's a sensitive question and
But
a really
this is the thing, you assumed that I
question.
hadn't. You assumed that I had no understanding
I
of this
had
issue.
no idea.
I don't think you'd ask a woman if she'd been raped.
I think this was. Is this qualify as leading question? I think she was trying to do a gotcha, right?
Yeah, she's trying to do a gotcha.
So
and
that
he's
that is
absolutely right.
leading question. Boop. We just got another thing on the card.
He is absolutely right, though. She would never have asked a woman that question.
Well, she would
air.
never have asked that for the purpose that she did, right?
Yeah, as a gotcha.
The purpose that she did was as a gotcha. You know, she was expecting him to say no, and then she could just like jump down his throat.
Yeah.
Well,
how do you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the boxes I almost put on here is how dare you, how very dare you, sir. But I chose the words lead to violence instead. Okay, but yeah, it's a good clip. I think it continues for a little bit here.
I have several times.
Really, in this context.
And the reason I'm asking that question, obviously, is to see if you understand the impact that your rape discourse has on those who've been victims of sexual. Do you realise the impact that this rape discourse has on those who've been the victims of sexual violence?
I don't think you get.
Oh my fucking god! This stupid, arrogant cunt.
Wait, let me go back.
I have been the victim of a forceful attempted rape by two people. Right? By two people at the same time. Two people holding me down, trying to get my clothes off. Right? While I'm sitting there, dog, shut up! Oh my god, Jesus! While I'm lying there under a fucking swing at like 11 o'clock at night or something like that, under a swing in a playground, thinking this is how I'm going to lose my virginity with sand up my ass.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't get offended by Carl's rape discourse.
Well, okay. Carl just said that he's a victim of sexual assault, and you are essentially negating his ability to talk to that with any kind of authority, which is amazing because obviously she had written this. I don't know if she'd written this out or if it was handed to her, but the expected response that he was supposed to give was no.
Yeah.
And now what she's doing, if I don't know if anybody's noticing this, now what she's doing is literally negating the experience of a sexual assault survivor.
Well, she's completely ignoring it, right? She's not asking him, well, if you've been sexually assaulted, how could you actually talk like this? And he could have said, well, because it helps me, right?
Yeah,
it helps me get through it.
Granted him legitimacy. That's my point.
Yeah.
She's completely ignoring what he just said. And she's also completely negating the fact that he is a sexual assault survivor when she says that, have you considered the effect of your actions on sexual assault survivors? Well, he is one. How could he possibly not have considered the actions that he's taking on himself?
Yeah, I don't think she believes him.
No, I don't think she may not believe him, or alternatively, she's simply reading from a script.
Yeah,
and he
she's
wasn't
just
supposed to give that answer.
Yeah, she's like, gone off programming. She's trying to go back and...
What an unbelievable bore. Like, just an unbelievable chauvinist.
He went off script.
This woman is. She's such a... here she is in front of somebody, a man who is a sexual violence survivor, a sexual assault survivor, okay? Let's just lay it out there. And I will use the term survivor. She's right in front of him. And instead of actually considering his point of view, actually being kind in some way, or at least not negating him, she is perpetuating further abuse in this manner by saying these things. Now, fair enough, you want to talk about these issues, you want to grill him because he's a politician, fair enough, that's acceptable. But maybe you should drop this fucking subject, you goddamn frickin' chauvinist pig. You mean, ugly mean. You're not just mean, you're an ugly mean type of human being. Ugly mean.
Yep.
I don't have the right kind of word just to describe the sheer level of insensitive lack of compassion.
Detestable.
I believe the term
Detestable.
we're using these days is dirty smear merchants. I think that's what
More
we're
than
calling
a dirty smear merchant, Brian. This is an absolute failure of any kind of basic human decency in this woman. I mean, really, do you sit in front of somebody who says, yeah, I've survived sexual assault, and then you're like, oh, you know what, I'm going to continue talking as if I didn't hear that. Not only not that I didn't hear that, but I'm going to negate that it actually happened. Now, fair enough. If somebody is accusing someone of sexual assault to the police, yeah, you have to have some level of, did that actually happen? You have to give the potential, the person who's accused due process. So you have to be skeptical. But she is not in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is that she would say, if this was reversed, if she was a man and Carl was a woman, the BBC would be replaying that clip over and over and over again and saying, see? What an insensitive, toxically masculine, privileged, patriarchal monster! Look at him, negating the lived experience of a poor, frail survivor of rape.
Agreed. Right? And it's like what I think is like she just absolutely wasn't expecting him to answer yes, he's been sexually assaulted. And yeah, it really is telling that the very next thing out of her mouth is, have you considered how your rape discourse affects victims of sexual assault? And it's like, yes. As a victim of sexual assault, I have considered that.
Yeah, I have considered that.
Yeah.
How could I not have considered that as a victim of sexual assault? As I am a victim of sexual assault, and this is my supposed discourse. Of course, where he goes with that is to say, well, I'm not having a rape discourse. This isn't a rape discourse that I'm presenting. It's a discourse on media lies, but
yeah.
Let's keep going, Brad.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I got a couple super chats. We got $20 from Christofferson Katalikis. He says, I want Alison to say my name, Christofferson Katalikis. So I guess say it the way I said it.
Troll. Oh, man. Maybe if you send another super chat, don't.
Okay.
Send another super chat.
Are you not going to say it? He gave us
No,
$20.
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it.
Also, I want you all to have my shekels. Also, I spoke to a feminist last night. She hugged a guy who was rubbed against in public, but not to me, who was forced. Funny that. Albert Nada version 2 gives us $5 Canadian and says it's only wrong to joke about female victims of assault. Male victims are fair game. Cases in point are Wedding Crashers and Myra Breckenridge. All right.
Oh yeah, and also Get Him to the Greek. That was an incredible one.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I did want to say, right, is because I can remember watching Family Guy with my kids when they were like 8 and 10 years old. And Quagmire kind of sneaks into the girls' bathroom at a high school and opens a stall door and finds a cheerleader who's been hogtied and gagged. And he's like, ooh, jackpot.
Mm-hmm.
And my kids, they go, ha, ha, and then they look at me and they go, I don't get it. Like, I'm explaining to you either. That's a rape joke. It's a fucking rape joke. on primetime TV on a
Oh,
cartoon.
yeah.
Yeah, giggity. Yeah, and like this is just like it's I remember watching, and this is the most hilarious thing. I remember watching, you know who Lindy West is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lindy West is that fat woman who used to write for Jezebel.
Yeah.
Maybe she still does. And you know, she used to complain about how horrible it was to be a fat, obnoxious, angry, PMSing bitch, and have the person sitting next to her on the plane kind of not be happy being there.
Mm-hmm.
Because of fat phobia, apparently, not because she was like being a horrible bitch by her own description. But anyway, so she's doing this debate with a comedian about rape jokes, and I can maybe find the link. Was posted on YouTube, right? Moderated debate with a comedian, and in that debate, where she is arguing that rape jokes are never okay, she makes a rape joke. She makes a rape joke, and everybody laughs.
What was the rape joke? I'm
Oh
curious.
God, I forget. It was like, uh, well, it's not like anyone's holding them down and making them do it or something like that, right? Like it's like it was just kind of an off the cuff thing that slipped out of her mouth before she even realized, and then everybody laughed, and the comedian called her on it, and she was just like, oh shit, I made a rape joke.
Jesus Christ. Do
I
you have to
know.
go down this road? It
I know.
doesn't help victims to do this.
I know. I know.
It
And
doesn't
it's
help
just
them.
it's fucking hilarious that in a debate where she was taking the hard stand that rape jokes are never okay, she accidentally made a rape joke.
I know.
Lol.
It is really ridiculous because this isn't going to help it's not going to prevent a single person from being raped, and it's not going to help a single person get over rape. Period. Just not.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are a rape victim who is triggered by these things, please get psychological help, because you're training yourself to be triggered by something that is innocuous, and it's going to cripple your life. So none of this is helping victims at all. It's just using victims as a political tactic to silence other people. And to
It's
what
it's
end?
it's like
What is the end goal? Do these women actually project this into the future? You've silenced everything using your excessive amount of offense over minor issues. What kind of world do you think that's going to create?
well, I'm just thinking, like in terms of training yourself to be traumatized and triggered by innocuous things, right? And I'm thinking, like when you do any kind of sewing, right, particularly hand sewing, you develop a callus on your index finger, right, where you grip the needle and you push it through. You develop a callus there to protect your tender flesh from the friction of having to push through the needle, right? And it's almost like they want these rape victims, right, to not build up calluses, right? Not build up the callus that will protect them, but they want them to like give themselves a daily chemical peel on their fingertip, right? So that anytime they even freaking come near a needle, their fingers already sore, and they look at it, and it's like, and they relive the whole thing.
And they want
Right.
them to be crippled because they want them to they crave that moment of abject helplessness. And this is why I say they really start to sound like rapists. They crave that abject moment of helplessness in a woman where she's totally and utterly incapable. And if they could, they would preserve that in every woman forever. I mean, I mean, if you're a woman listening to me now, that is the world they want for you. Like that idea of a chemical peel, and you're so sensitive that you can't even handle the slightest breeze against your skin. It just turns you inside out with agony. That quivering, incapable, frail helplessness is where they want every single woman to exist in perpetuity throughout her entire life. And these are the people that for some reason we've decided are empowering women. And you can tell that they want this because everything they do is reducing women down to victims, and that they should be triggered by everything, almost everything that they see in society. They should have that horrible feeling of naked vulnerability and pain of everything in society, because they're constantly saying women are victims of everything in society. And if you disagree, they sure as hell will show you that you're a victim.
Yeah, they'll make one of you. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll make you a victim if you disagree with this. If you step up and you say, "Hey, I think this is actually not helping women. This is not empowering, and it's actually really toxic. And also, it's slightly disturbing that you want to keep women in that state of trembling, vulnerable, or incapable, fear." Like, who does that? Who wants women in that state? Pray tell, Victoria.
Well,
Why do you want women in that state?
rapists probably do, but let's not get into that.
Yeah. I got some super chats and we should move on. So Christofferson gives us another $10 and says, "But Alison, we all love you. Yes, I'll send all the shekels." So he sent more money. The DCV Titan gives us $2 Canadian and says, "The girl Quagmire found was in the men's room." Okay.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Well, geez. What can we say?
You can say Christofferson Catalicus.
Well, it
I
was
couldn't
like
say that. Christofferson.
Christofferson Catalicus. Yes, you did it. It was years ago. Years ago.
Yeah.
My children have moved out now. They are adults entering their mid-20s. So,
Okay.
yeah, the children who looked at me and said, "I don't get it."
Okay, but to make it so that our audience doesn't enter their mid-20s before we get on to the next segment.
Well, I
Segue!
got one more super chat. Schrodinger's cat just gave us £5 and said, "One thing to consider if, like me, you live in the UK, is to complain to the regulator Ofcom, OFCOM. I'm seriously considering it." Okay, none of us live in the UK, but thank you for the donation nonetheless. I'm going to move on. I'm going to play the rest of this clip, and then I'm going to move on to the next one.
Of sexual violence.
I don't think you get to speak for victims.
Okay, so that was the end of the clip before you guys started talking, which is pretty much a good way to put it because it shut her up for a while. So she
I bet it shut her up for
she had to be
Remember,
she had to be
edited.
rebooted after that one. So we're gonna move on to 522, and this is her reading a letter from a survivor.
This makes my stomach churn. How does he find this acceptable? Comments like this may not seem a lot to a bloke like him, but to me, jokes about what I went through feel like a bullet. That's from a 31-year-old male survivor of sexual violence in Northampton.
Okay, well, hold on. I got a. This is another.
It's another bingo.
Yeah, it's a bingo thing. This is. I think it would be female victim. No. This is a male victim that she's using. So this is anecdotal evidence. So I'm going to click that for the anecdote there.
Anecdotal evidence, but anecdotal evidence that cannot be refuted by any other.
It cannot. Well, and also cannot be confirmed because it's hard. This is the thing that I find interesting. All right, they don't give a shit about male victims until this interview. She says, "Oh, that was from a male victim." Now she makes it a point to say that, and I think the reason is so that I guess she believes that he would take it more seriously if the letter came from a male victim. That is to say that she believes that men are thicker skinned. Therefore, if even men are complaining about his so quote unquote rape rhetoric, that is supposed to make her argument or her point stronger. But yeah, I don't believe that it's a real letter. We can't know for sure, right? She's just reading letters.
I just realized something. So. This entire framing by the BBC is essentially pitting two groups of survivors against each other. Those who do not use humor to cope, and those who do. Is there anything about this, what the BBC's doing, that isn't despicable? Like, seriously,
Mm-hmm.
to pit two groups of rape victims
They
against
believe
each
that there is only one way that you're actually supposed to cope with sexual assault and rape, and that is to essentially stay hurt and afraid and vulnerable.
Yeah, well, they're stigmatizing those people who use coping to cope with rape, with having been raped, which obviously, or having been sexually assaulted, which obviously Carl Benjamin is one of those people. And it's amazing.
And the person that he said that he talked to is also one of those people.
And now they're quoting this male victim who says that his words, Carl Benjamin's words, makes his stomach churn, and he doesn't think that Carl would say those things because he just doesn't understand what a survivor goes. Well, Carl, he's just, and the first time I watched this, I was like, the way that Carl was looking really uncomfortable came off like really, it came off to me, and this was just my initial reaction. It came off as it just didn't come off right. You know what I mean? It just gave a vibe that didn't feel like it was a good vibe from him. And then rewatching this, I'm like, he's uncomfortable because once again, he's just said, I'm a survivor of sexual assault, and once again she's reading something out to him that's saying, well, you couldn't possibly understand this because you're not a survivor of sexual assault. It's like, at what point does she stop and say, maybe I should stop doing this to him? I should stop actually traumatizing. I mean, I'm sure he's quite,
I don't think he's traumatized.
I know, but
I think he's sick to death of hearing about this, right? Because it's been
yeah, no, I would
nonstop.
agree that he's sick to death, but actually when I look back at it, his body language is very uncomfortable. I don't know if it's traumatized or the fact that she's just drilling this shit. And yes, he is sick to death of it. But here's the thing. Even if he wasn't him, Karen, even if it wasn't him, what she's doing is repeatedly throwing into someone who has stated on the air that they are a survivor of sexual assault. She's repeatedly bringing up this idea that they aren't and couldn't possibly understand what a survivor of sexual assault. Even if he is totally over what happened to me, I can only speak for myself. I cannot speak for Sargon. I can't speak for Carl. But I'm actually pretty okay with myself now. am also a survivor, but if someone sat next to me and kept throwing in my face the idea that I couldn't possibly understand what survivors go through, I would be very uncomfortable. Now, I wouldn't necessarily be traumatized, but it would be deeply emotionally uncomfortable. And that's what I think, and this is my interpretation, that's what I think where the discomfort that I'm seeing from him might be coming from. And, like I said, it's only my interpretation. It can also be that he's sick to death of it. But the other thing is, doesn't he have a right to expect some level of respect for his own experience?
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't mean like, oh, she can't talk about shit, but maybe she should stop saying that at this point. Some kind of understanding that he exists as a human being.
Yeah, if she's gonna apply her own logic to what she's saying he shouldn't be doing, then yes, by that standard, her own standards. But
well, even more like the standards of anyone, really. Well, not the standards of anyone. Okay, fair enough. If you're in a position where you're against somebody who's going to do whatever they can to make you feel like shit.
she's creating this. She's the one saying that what he's saying is making rape victims uncomfortable and that he shouldn't be doing things that make rape victims uncomfortable. But what she's doing is making, if what he says is true, but irrelevant because he told her this, so now she's got this new information. By her standard, at the very least, of you shouldn't be, talking making rape victims feel uncomfortable with your rhetoric. She is making him uncomfortable by essentially ignoring, what he said, that he was himself a victim, right? So by her standard alone, which is, I know that her bar is pretty low, I guess, for what is considered offensive, but she seems perfectly comfortable making him feel uncomfortable.
And it might just be the hypocrisy of it, because that would really really upset me too, even more than if somebody just sat in front of me and said, "Well, yeah, you couldn't possibly know what a rape victim experiences," and I'd be like, "Well, maybe I could,
Mm-hmm.
possibly." But then if they turned around and said, "Well, you need to consider the experience of other rape victims because you have never, you don't understand what it is," and I'd be like, "What?" The double standard itself is like would be just a mind fuck. So that like this woman is like sitting there and nobody calls her out on BBC. That the BBC is sanctioning this. This is
Well,
acceptable.
one thing that I do want to say is that, like, when she opened this interview, and I don't watch that bit, but when she opened the interview, she essentially said, "Well, we've had candidates from all of the parties on, and to talk about policy and stuff, but that's not what this interview is. We're
Mm-hmm.
here to talk about this tweet and these statements about rape."
Yeah.
Would she?
Right? So literally, she said, every other candidate I've interviewed, we've talked about policies and platforms and manifestos and, and all of that stuff, right? But in this case, she literally said, we're not going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about this other thing. And I think actually, because he starts the interview so fucking, like, just with this absolute, like, he's staring daggers at her right from the
Mm-hmm.
get-go. I think he was invited on to talk about policy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
well, be it as
and then she announced, that's not what we're going to talk about.
well, be it as it may, and I know I'm probably driving this point into the ground, but she would not do this to a woman who had just said, "Yeah, I
Oh,
actually
God,
have a
no.
No, she
No.
Of
would
course
not do
not.
this. She would actually be aware that continuing to tell this woman that, "No, actually, I'm going to continue to imply that what you said happened to you didn't happen to you." She would be aware that that is basically getting bingo on the what she would call the rape culture card.
Mm-hmm.
Your rape is different than other people's rape. Oh, and then it didn't happen. Oh, I actually don't think you can speak to rape survivors because you don't toe my particular line, or sexual assault
Well,
survivors.
and he literally just came out and told her, I don't think you get to speak for rape victims.
And that's good. Like, I'm
Yeah.
glad that he said that because she doesn't get to speak for rape victims. In fact, a single rape victim can't speak for rape victims because you're not every single person who's been raped or sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
You can't.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? Why are you like? Why are these rape victims? These people who say that they're rape victims or sexual assault victims. Why are they judging us, the other sexual assault and rape victims, and saying that we are wrong in the way that we heal? What right do you have? And how dare you take the same thing that I experienced and use it as your moral justification to shove your fucking proverbial genitals in my face and say, "Suck it." Like, seriously, how much gall can you possibly have to be one of those rape victims who says, "Well, you're not healing the right way for me, therefore I am going to shove my beliefs about rape down your throat and you should just lie back and take it. Fuck you."
There you go.
All right.
That
Seriously, what?
that was quite the metaphor.
I got a couple super chats and then we'll play the next bit. Voltaire's Puppet gives us £5 and says, just watch the BBC interview, or that BBC interview. Scary. Thank you, Voltaire. Tyler Preston gives us $10 and says, feminists only care about male abuse victims when the perpetrators are also male. They do this in order to further demonize the male gender as biologically violent, meanwhile ignoring abusive women. Interestingly enough, though, they believe that gender is a social construct, but okay, you are right. All right, so let us continue on to the next clip.
They are damaging.
Yes, I'm aware of the politically correct narrative around this, but there is another narrative that I suppose we can call the non-politically correct one that I support. I think it's a lot more empowering not to be controlled by jokes. I think that...
Oh, I missed a bit. Well, I can just jump ahead. Originally, she basically made a statement about how these rape jokes are incredibly hurtful, which actually is on the bingo card, I think. Is it... yeah, right. You hurt people's feelings. So, there we go. All right. I had a feeling there was something about feelings in there. All right. So then he counters by saying, I think it's actually empowering.
Owning jokes and laughing
I'm
at them
interested
as a point. Why are you interrupting me? Why are you interrupting me now? Come on.
I'm interested that you won't accept that survivors of rape and sexual violence find what you've done to be incredibly hurtful.
And you won't accept that survivors
you
of sexual
don't get
violence.
to fucking say that, lady.
Yeah, no.
You do not get to say that. You don't speak for me. You don't speak for Karen. You don't speak for the women and men that Carla's no doubt talked about this issue. You don't speak for us. So you don't get to say you speak for sexual assault survivors. You speak for yourself, and you speak for those sexual assault survivors who think it is their right and their position in life, or that they've been elected, I don't know, the aristocracy of sexual assault, and the rest of us are just supposed to receive their edicts from on high about how we're supposed to heal and deal with the experiences that we've had. You speak for those people, but nobody else. No other rape, sexual assault survivors. No one. Jesus, the arrogance.
Yeah, no, it is super arrogant, and the fact that, you know, like, he literally said, I haven't interrupted you, why do you keep interrupting me? Right? Because she's not interested in hearing his point of view. She's just interested in getting through her list of shit that's been written down, probably by a man.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, that's the other thing.
Not that I'm eager to embrace that trope that she's just reading off a script written by a man, but I've had that hurled at me enough times to be willing to throw it back at her, and I'd really be interested. I'd really be interested in finding out if her producer is male, and if the list of questions almost certainly was, she's a presenter, she's not a journalist, right? So the list of questions was written by somebody else, a producer.
Okay, well, sure. I just wanted to say that it's not that far-fetched to think that what she's saying is she's essentially just presenting a man's words. Because what I've noticed about the other side, as it were, is they tend to just sort of like empty shell their way through life until their white knight gives them a direction. I was watching this during the SNC-Lavalin scandal. It's a Canadian scandal, and Trudeau would be saying something, and then all of the women in his harem would just bobblehead. And it's like, do you have no independence of thought? Of course, if they did have independence of thought, they would go the way of Jody Wilson-Raybould and just get kicked out.
And Philpott, yeah.
Yeah, they just get kicked out and slimed and smeared in the most brutal way possible. But the idea that on this, what I always find it ironic when feminist women accuse us of being puppets for men, because it's like, do you even have your own self? Because it really, you can't just constantly be reducing yourself down to a victim. And that's like the exact opposite of developing an independent self. Are you really, is there any there for you? I wonder if that's true about this woman too. I mean, does she just say the words that she's told to say? Oh.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing yes.
Well,
you know,
she's just the anchor person. I don't think that she's, I don't know though. I could be wrong, so I don't want to assume. But yeah, it's not, he's not talking to a woman. He's talking to an institution. And that is just like the head at the end of this Hydra that he happens to be interacting with. And that's for certain. Like, she's backed by a team, right? So.
Yeah.
All right.
I just wanted to say one last thing to Karen's comment that he probably came on to talk about these issues. I know that he probably did, but I actually think that this conversation that he's having with her and how it's playing out is actually critically important, and possibly even more important than talking about the other issues, because these dynamics are underlying why we're having the kind of problems we're having with cooperation, with dealing with each other honestly. These kinds of threat narratives that she's presenting are part and parcel for what's going wrong in our society. So these conversations, I think, are the ones that are critical to have. And it's, Sargon's the one Carl's the one who's having them. So I really appreciate that.
Okay, let's continue.
That survivors of sexual violence find what I've done empowering.
You've spoken to one person.
No, I've
who said
spoken
that
to lots
you.
of people. That's just the one example that I'm giving you right now.
Why do you think you've had kippers and milkshakes thrown over you while campaigning?
Because you're radicalising people by lying about me.
So there is a link, you say, between language and acts of violence?
There is a link
okay.
between...
So bingo.
Yeah, there's actually, yeah, there is, but I want to talk about why that is. Okay, so words lead to violence. I got that one. I feel like there was something else that I was gonna click and I left it out. Oh, appeal to the mob because she said, why do you think you got milkshakes and fish thrown at you?
Oh,
which is basically saying, oh, if the mob doesn't like you, there must be something to it, right? It's sort of like why, they make the same arguments as to well, why did you get beat up by Antifa? Like when CNN talks about Antifa attacks, and they say, well, if you're getting beat up by anti-fascists, it must be because you're a fascist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to click that box. Okay, Karen, if you want to...
But yeah, no, there is a huge difference between making a joke about a dark subject, right? In fact, I was just watching today an episode of series, I think it's a Viceland series. I actually did an interview with this guy in September of 2017 in San Diego when I was attending the NCFM 40th anniversary conference, right? But he did an interview with Janet Bloomfield, right? And he's a comedian, but he's doing this series called Hate Thy Neighbor. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Which is about political polarization and extremism and stuff like that, right? And he did an interview with her where it was titled Meet the Woman Who Thinks Women Shouldn't Have the Right to Vote or something like that, right? And she, I'll give them this much. They actually allowed her to sort of put forward her position. They didn't completely eliminate all of the context and her reasoning and everything else through the edits. But interspersed in this show is him doing stand-up. And he's like, of course, women should have the right to vote, women vote, but we just don't count them. That's how things should work, right? Mm-hmm. And then he says, it's kind of like you're driving around with your kid and you hand him a steering wheel and he's like, look, Dad, I'm driving the car. And you're like, yeah, you're driving the car, And so he's making jokes about this topic that he's super kind of shocked about that somebody could hold that position, right? He's making jokes about it, right? And nobody is going to take him and say he thinks women should not have the right to vote and therefore you should go out and commit political violence against him, right? But what they're doing with Sargon, they're not joking about his position. They're not joking about they're not mocking him. Right. They're actually saying this man is dangerous. This man is dangerous. And how many times can the mainstream media say somebody is dangerous before somebody out there, some kook, takes it in upon themselves to do something about this dangerous person, right? This is not in jest. It's not, satire. These are trusted presenters from the British Broadcasting Corporation, right? Publicly funded news, right? Who were completely dead serious, telling the public, this man is dangerous. He's dangerous and hateful and probably a fascist, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm just of course there's a link between words and violence in that case. This freaking Kamala whatever
Harris?
his name.
Kamala Khan?
Kamali, whatever his name is. I forget what his name was. Maddox or something like that. His jokes, when he's on the stage joking about how women shouldn't have, we should trick them into thinking that they have the right to vote and then just not count their votes, right? Because that's how things should work, right? Nobody's taking that seriously. It's like they're all saying yeah, that's absurd. Of course, women should have the right to vote, right? And when Carl Benjamin is joking about rape everybody, like, the jokes don't work unless people understand that rape is horrible.
Yeah, it's actually, if you
Yeah.
get rid of that, if we can't joke about rape, then that's a bad sign.
If we can't joke about horrible things, period, right? Horrible shit that happens to people. You know how many? I had a boss. One of my favorite bosses. He was a big fan of dead baby jokes. And
That's a
I
really
told him a
narrow
joke.
subgenre of joke, but I didn't know there were too many jokes. Like, I see blonde jokes, I could get behind that. Jokes about the priest, the rabbi, and the whatever the third one usually is, minister going into a place. I could see that. The farmer's daughter jokes. I see that's a genre, but I didn't know there was a lot of dead baby jokes anyway.
Oh, tons of dead baby
Apparently,
jokes.
yeah.
He knew them all, and he would tell them to us. And then I told him a joke that actually he just
Somebody said they are hard to deliver. Okay, I just had to say that. Go ahead.
He just stared at me for a second, blinked a couple times, and said, "You're so going to hell for that," and walked away.
Mhm.
Right? And I just burst out laughing because, and then he went around the corner and he laughed, right?
Mhm.
And it's a joke that I told my mom and her friend. Like, she's 75, her friend is 80, right? And I'm talking about off-color humor and free speech and stuff like that. And I said, well, what's the best part what's the best thing about having sex with 23-year-olds? And they're like, what? And I'm like, there's 20 of them. and they pause, and then they just both burst out laughing, and then they're so ashamed that I'm laughing, but
yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, so it's like, that's a pedophile joke. Oh my god, I can never run for office now. I've just promoted pedophilia. Like, what?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, but this idea that yes, words can lead to violence. Yeah, no, words spoken in earnest can lead to violence. Jokes, not so much.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of a stretch there.
Yeah, there's a study about that I want to reference. But first, a couple things. Somebody wisely in the chat said that I missed another box on the old bingo card. She did a "so you're saying," so I got to click the "so you're saying" box there because that was how we got into this whole thing. Oh, so you're saying that words do lead to violence.
We've almost got a bingo.
Almost. We just need Orange Man Bad, and we got a bingo. See, if we get Orange Man Bad, we get a bingo. Which is with today's media, there's a pretty good chance that it could come up. But the one thing that I wanted to say is that it's interesting that she says that, because the truth about it is that feminists and authoritarian leftists, they want to police media because they're concerned that words and media and images in media can lead to negative consequences. This is why they want to, they don't want to objectify women. They don't want to portray rape. They don't want to portray women as damsels. They don't want to they want to control language. They don't want to they have all these things. You can't tell rape jokes, as an example, because they're afraid that if you tell rape jokes, you normalize rape jokes, and if you normalize rape jokes, then you're going to normalize rape. And there's a point, it's like the question mark and then profit. There's a gap in there, but somehow it gets to that point. But what's interesting is that the truth about it is that when people know that the media that they're consuming is not reality, it's entertainment, whether it's a video game or a television show or an anime or a movie, whatever, they are not likely to take their values out of it, especially when there are what we would generally consider to be absurdist things in there, just people who watch Game of Thrones don't go around committing incest and rape, correct? But that's like half of the fucking show. So it's because the media doesn't do that to people. But where we do get our attitudes from, what does have influence over us is the news media, because we are supposed to trust that media. And so when they tell us things and they say this is happening, or this is, these people who voted this way are your enemy, that actually does affect people, because they believe that what they're being told is something that's affecting them in the real world. It's like people know the difference between reality and fantasy. And from what I heard from the studies I've seen, and this is a person I don't like, but she's absolutely correct on this. Liana K talked about it on a video where she was basically saying, do violent video games actually make men violent? And of course they don't. However, the actual news media does have an effect on anyone. This is how you get people throwing fish and milkshakes at Sargon, because they watch the news and the news tells them this is an evil person. You should do something about it. Or they see him and they just want to be violent. That's why what happens to Tommy Robinson happens to him. That's why what happens to, Ben Shapiro is called a Nazi, the Jewish guy, and he's not allowed on campus. There is media that affects people, but it's the stuff that we're supposed to trust. Okay, go ahead, Alison.
Well, it just occurred to me that the media wants to have more control over our language than we are allowed to have control over theirs. And yet they are considered to be the institutions of truth that we should base our morals and actions on. Isn't that fascinating?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's an attempt at top-down control, right? And
yeah.
The thing is like, the thing that I think these people don't understand is that, politics is downstream from culture, not upstream, right?
Yeah, but they want to do everything top down because they can't influence it at the base because their ideas are crazy. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm reading Pete, just today, reading Pete Buttigieg's manifesto, right? He's running for the Democrats in the primary. And, he's like, we're going to institute a Green New Deal, and, we're going to have this and that and the other thing. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking that's like totally not a moderate position. And a bunch of guys, I mentioned that on Twitter, right? Or it was mentioned on Twitter that, like, these are actually extremist positions, a lot of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's not going to get a lot of moderate support for them from the electorate. And somebody said, "Oh, because the right wing are so far right that they can't even embrace the most moderate leftist position." And I just posted a graph that shows that since 1994, the right have moved like a smidge to the right. The median right winger, the median Republican, has moved a smidge to the right. The median left winger has gone so far left you can't even fucking see them anymore. Yeah. That's Pew research too. Like it's not by some kind of right wing think tank. It's Pew.
And the other thing is that the conservatives now are a larger umbrella. Like
because the left has pushed everyone out. So, but basically,
the conservatives have actually, over the last while the median conservative has moved slightly to the right, the conservative base has consolidated around the center right. So most conservatives are sitting at the center right. Right, mm-hmm. Most leftists, most Democrats are sitting at the far left. So.
But the truth is that this entire thing is, I believe this was a study done on conservative positions, is now conservative positions have so much variety to the point where people who would very vehemently disagree with each other are now classed as conservative. And it's just fascinating to watch, because it really is more like a celestial body, like a star just jettisoning its corona into space from the left is just jettisoning itself, and then the rest is being captured by the right, and it's no longer really just the right, it's whatever the left is ejecting from itself for not being pure enough. And not even like the liberals don't really belong in the left anymore. Classical liberals, unionists, I don't even think they belong in the left anymore. Real communists who think that communism should actually apply to men and women, I don't think they're in the left anymore. These non-caste, non-morally caste-based communists, I don't think they're in the left anymore. They're Bernie bros.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, and something like 20% of Bernie Sanders supporters have said that if they get the impression that he was squeezed out again like he was last time because it was Hillary's turn, so the DNC rigged the game. If they feel like if he is not the candidate and they feel like he was squeezed out, they're going to vote for Trump. They're not just going to sit home, right? They're not going to just abstain. They're going to go out and they're going to vote for Trump.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that this is why I think in a lot of ways they're losing the plot and they're losing the popular vote. And it's because they have completely, it's not because of their liberal values. It's not because they're leftist values. It's because the values that they have are neither. They are a fascist, authoritarian. I know fascist is their favorite word to throw at other people. They are a fascist, authoritarian, moral caste system. That is their value now.
Well, one of the things that Sargon actually said once, and I forget exactly where, right? But he essentially said the fascists started out as socialists, right? And no, they didn't nationalize industry, right? They didn't necessarily, they kept everything privately owned. They didn't nationalize the railroads. They didn't nationalize the factories and the oil rigs and all of that stuff, right? What they nationalized was the people. Right? And because they said, why would we nationalize all of this stuff when we can nationalize the people?
Yeah, and then they'll just give all that stuff to us willingly.
That's right. And it's like I've said before, the difference between communism and fascism or Nazism is they're both society. They both see society as an organism, right? And in communism, in fascism, every individual is a cell, and they are supposed to subordinate their interests for the good of the organism, right? Whereas in communism, every individual is a cell, and they're supposed to subordinate their interests for the good of the other cells. Totally different.
Well, yeah, but really, what I'm trying to get at, I know that, is that the left, what we see as the left now, has morphed into some other thing. It is literally the party of creating a moral caste system. And I mean, I don't know, like, the thing is that we call it the left because it's sort of, I guess the cancer just came out of there. That's where it came. I mean, the cancer is in the lung, therefore it is lung cancer. However, the cancer is not the lung. Does that make sense?
No, I agree. And when Jordan Peterson has said repeatedly, we know when the right goes too far, and it's when they start talking about racial superiority. We know that, right? We saw it with Hitler. We saw it, in other situations, right? When they talk about racial superiority and racial purity, that's when we know that they're going too far, right? But when do we know when the left has gone too far? How do we detect the cancer on that side of things, right? And one of the things too, like with the alt-right and stuff is, you have people like Richard Spencer, right? Like, he wants universal health care, and he wants all kinds of government funding and therefore government control over a whole bunch of stuff that people should really be free to be able to choose or not. He actually wants more government intervention and more government control over industry and over, sort of city planning and all of that stuff, right? That's no different than a communist a Soviet centralized government.
I don't want to get too off in the weeds.
All right,
but
off in the weeds.
No, I know, but I don't think that the alt-right is right-wing. I don't think that when you go too far right, you get Nazism either, because I think the Nazis were leftists. But that could be another conversation that we can do at another time. Because what Alison is getting at is this isn't about left and right, but rather that whatever sickness we're dealing with is started in the left, but it isn't the left. It's something far worse. So
yeah, well, it started in the left. It started in the lungs, and it's lung cancer, but the cancer isn't the lung.
Right.
Is what I'm getting at. And we can't, to be quite frank, you can't have a conservative position without a liberal position, because you will end up with I don't know. You'll end up with a society that doesn't
stagnation.
Work. Stagnation.
Yeah. That's another thing that. Well, anyway, I let's move on. I get what you're what you're saying. Next clip. How much?
I'll pitch to the conservatives. You can choose your liberals. You can choose them. You don't have to choose these
I don't
ones.
think conservatism and liberalism are. I don't think that those are mutually exclusive ideas. I don't. I think that that's a framing that was made. I think that's another way that the leftists fuck with our language. And I think the conservatives ate it up and started using it, because I don't think that those things are. I know that right wingers are not necessarily conservatives. Liberals are not necessarily left wingers, and also liberals and conservatives are not necessarily opposites. I think that most people have a bit of both. Most people. And I think that most people are pretty liberal, even conservatives, and that's what I think. So, but I think that's a. I don't think that
I can hear your annoyance.
I will also say. Well, I also will say that the fissure that we are being told is happening is not as bad as the media is making it sound. The only fissure is that there is a crevice, and on one side of the crevice is most of sane humanity, and on the other side are crazy leftists like that, and they're the ones saying it's divided. No, you are doing it, but they also happen to be, many of them, in positions of power and authority and influence, and this is the reason why it's a threat. So anyway, how much longer should we go before we go into the after show, because it's like 8:30 over here?
All right, let's just how much more do you have of this?
I'm about 8. I'm at 8 minutes and 30 seconds. I have like 2 more, I guess, that I could play, 2 or 3, and then we can call it.
And then we have to do the Joe Rogan, right? Yeah.
No, we don't have to do Joe Rogan. We could do that another time. We can leave that. That's old anyways, like I said.
All right. It's old. It's old news, Alison.
Yeah. He said his thing, and he's.
He
No,
said
I was
MRAs,
actually thinking we could just play that clip and just answer to it really quickly, because he basically is. The problem with the Joe Rogan clip is it's hard to answer to it, because he basically just is his own counter argument.
He owns himself. Yeah,
anyway,
I mean,
he owns himself. I mean, I've never seen someone own himself so quickly.
Yeah, in the same breath. I mean, yeah, but anyway.
Because I was telling a joke. It was very clearly contextually a joke. This is why you have to decontextualize it in order for what you're saying to make sense.
You sound like a hypocrite.
I don't care. It's a joke.
Because
who isn't a hypocrite?
When you're the target, you blame the words on newspapers or the media. But when you target someone by attaching their name to your rape joke, that's okay.
Yeah, but I'm not inciting people.
And that's when he said, but I'm not inciting them. He should have said, well, and has she been raped as a result of my tweets?
Yeah. Did you die?
Oy.
So, but that goes to what I'm saying when she says, it doesn't make sense that you're saying that, when the media says these things, it causes violence, but then you believe that when you say things, it doesn't. No, yeah, because it's a difference. Because when people hear the media, and the media is saying this is an absolute truth, like the beginning of this fucking video where she reads out the tweet like it's really serious, and it comes across as, you think she's going to say right after that, and now for something completely different, like a man with 2 buttocks, but it's actually serious. So you're supposed to take it seriously, and this is why people get attacked, because they think something bad is happening, and they're trying to respond to it. They know that. Anyway.
You are inciting people.
You're normalising.
Every single person I've spoken to about the things that you have said about me don't understand any of it. And if I just sit there and interrogate the people who are alleging things about me, I can just sit there and explain to them the context, and they go, well, that's not very important, is it?
You're normalising this kind of language.
I'm normalising comedy because at this point, comedy is under attack in this country. I'm being investigated for a joke. I can name other comedians who are being investigated for jokes.
I think I got a bingo card mark on that one. She says, I think this is a joke analyst. I was I put that in there because I think there was actually an episode of some BBC thing where they literally brought on a joke analyst. An academic joke analyst to look at the "I wouldn't even rape you" tweet and like basically describe. And he concluded that it was a joke, and they still went ahead and said, well, it sounds really bad to us. You know, like they ignored him anyway. Yeah. They brought on a professional.
This expert that they brought on, right? This expert that they brought on, he said, yeah, no, it seems clear to me that this was in jest, that it was a joke. It's not a credible threat. It's not anything. It's a joke. And they were like, well, still harumph.
yeah, right.
Did you get avoiding questions? Did you put that one in?
Yeah, that was something that just kind of happens a lot. Here, I'll go ahead and pick it. Avoiding questions. Boop. Yeah, I don't know if we might not get a bingo, but we filled out a lot of squares. So
well, go to your next segment.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, I got super chats. DCV Titan gives us $5 Canadian and says, I can see why some people don't like dead baby jokes. Not everyone likes prop comedy. Pause for effect. Okay. Miles Kinslow gives us Kinslow gives us $10 and says, hey guys, speaking of Bernie, can someone tell Bernie Bros to stop calling Sanders daddy? Had a disturbing image of Bernie as a leather daddy in a BDSM club. Well, blame Milo, because that's what he did.
Well,
he started it, but
he would be the most milquetoast.
I've never heard anyone call Sanders daddy. That sounds sad, honestly. Okay, so where was I?
I have a question for you, Brian.
Yeah.
Have you ever told people that, you know, if they put in, I think, a super chat of like $30 or above, that we are forced to listen?
Yeah, if you put more than $30, no, I did like a while back, not today. But if you put in more than $30, it'll play like they'll read it out loud like the moment it goes through. So this might not cause them to shut up though. So you might just get like a jarbled mess of sound. Just let you know.
But here's the thing. Remember when it wasn't like that? And like every $5 super chat came through, it just turned the entire show into chaos.
Yeah, it drove Hannah up the wall. I was fine with it because I've dealt with that, but
I just remember watching Baked Alaska and He Who Shall Not Be Named coming on Baked Alaska's stream, and then one of He Who Shall Not Be Named's fans sending in a super chat that was for like $1, and it was open curly brackets, close curly brackets, open curly brackets, close curly brackets, until the entire thing was filled.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And
that's funny.
Baked is like just like trying desperately to shut the super chat freaking text voice off.
Oh,
right?
That's a good troll.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Is that worth $30? I would say yes. Okay, before I do, this picture of Sargon, you know what he reminds me of? You ever seen those old drawings of maps and there's like a cloud with a face that's blowing wind? That's what it looks like.
Or
okay,
the Green Man, you know, like on
I keep seeing the cloud with it's like a bearded cloud with a face, and it's like anyway.
Oh, it's like something out of a Monty Python.
Yeah, or like a storybook or an old treasure map or something like that. Okay.
Who are being investigated for jokes. We have gone down a very dark path. As Orwell says, printed on the front of this building, if liberty is to mean anything at all, it must mean the right to tell people that which they don't want to hear. Do you stand by that or not? This is the
printed
BBC.
on the front
Does
of the
BBC
building.
stand by that or not?
Here are some comments from your social media pages after your video.
I'll take that as a no. He basically asked her if she believed in that or not. I don't know
I'm
if
pretty
there's.
sure-
And then she just launches into the next thing, and he says, "I'll take that as a no."
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure you hurt people's feelings is also. You should.
I've
click
already
that one
I've
and-
already clicked that one. I've
Can
already
you,
clicked
can you
that
do
one.
straw manning? Because that was pretty freaking.
Yeah, we could do that. Straw man. There.
Context doesn't matter. Context doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, okay.
And you have to give her evoke female victims because she has been.
Yep.
Although not. I guess technically
No,
she's also been including male victims.
no, she did when she brings up
She
her
did.
anecdotes, and also there's Jess Phillips herself. So yeah, basically.
And what did you mean by begging the question? What's supposed to what criteria does that like what?
Where it's like asking us. It's well, what is begging the question? Begging. Are you just looking for a bingo?
Yeah, I might be looking for a bingo, but I also want to understand what would actually qualify as begging the question.
It's when the writer or speaker assumes the statement under examination to be true. So it's like you're looking for a premise. You're using a premise to support itself. You're trying to you already know the answer. You're just trying to figure out why it's right. You're basically asking a question in an effort to get that.
This the entire time.
Yeah.
So you might as well click that one too.
Okay. So before I know that would make us done. I do want to play one more soundbite because I thought it was really great. And it's about 14 minutes in. So we'll do 14:04. Maybe this will be sufficient to make the point. For some context, they were talking about Philip Davies. And Sargon is basically talking about how...
Jess Phillips.
This is
was
the
laughing
hilarious
at it.
thing.
Yeah.
This is the hilarious thing because he said, what she did to Philip Davies. She laughed at his suggestion that they table men's issues. That's what he said. That's what he said. And she said, that's inaccurate. And then she says, she laughed at his suggestion that they table men's issues. And then that was when he brought up male suicide, and she didn't laugh about that. Right.
Yeah,
and it's like, so you actually just owned yourself because he didn't say she laughed at male suicide. She laughed at his suggestion that they take
that men can't talk about male issues.
Because she happened to laugh when they were talking about male suicide. So a lot of people came to the assumption that she was laughing about male suicide. I know it's a really out of left field assumption to make that when she was laughing and he was mentioning male suicide, that she was actually laughing at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Later she says, you'll have to excuse me for laughing, that the idea that men don't have the opportunity to ask questions in this place is frankly a laughable thing. As the only woman on this committee, it seems like every day is International Men's Day.
Yeah, but that's her feminist bias. She blocked it. That's why it wasn't talked about. So her saying, well, he's a man, he can talk about it in any way he wants. Not if she's blocking it. And her demand on him, she wants 50% representation in Parliament. That's an unreasonable demand. Philip Davies doesn't get to choose that. So when do we have the debate on male suicide? It's the #1 killer of men under 45. My uncle committed suicide. When do we get to have that debate?
Thank you very much for talking to us today.
That's the point.
We've covered it a number of times on this program. Thank you very much for talking to us today.
Have they really covered male suicide?
I'm sure they have.
Yeah,
I'm sure they have.
They probably said it was toxic masculinity or something.
Toxic masculinity, yeah. And all of that stuff. And if
they're covering male suicide because there isn't enough of it. If they're covering it in terms of toxic masculinity, seriously, that entire narrative is killing men.
Yeah, I know. It's like, but the issue is that like he was just like, yeah, no, like you, and he could have essentially said, because she, prior to this, she said, Jess Phillips has essentially called for a policy, right, or law that would any candidate from standing if they've promoted rape or violence, right? And he forewent the easy response in favor of the difficult one, the one that actually deals with the issues, right? The easy response would be, what I tweeted, which is, I'm surprised Jess Phillips is advocating a policy that would disqualify her from standing for elections. After all, she did say if Corbyn hurt the party, she wouldn't knife him in the back, she'd knife him in the front, and in the middle of a knife crime epidemic, no less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he might have,
So-
because this is heavily edited. There's parts that where apparently he was talking about how other comedians had made rape jokes, like Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
Stephen Fry. But what I wanted to point out is that the fact that the BBC is supposedly talking about male suicide, how does that relate to the fact that it can't be brought up in Parliament because it keeps getting blocked by Jess Phillips?
It hasn't. It hasn't been. They've had their International Men's Day debates, right? That's a victory on the part of Philip Davies, and the only reason why it actually happened is because of the backlash Jess Phillips got over that video.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and she essentially had to back down. She
So
had
was
to back
forced
down.
to
Yeah.
back down.
Yeah, because otherwise, like, she was receiving so much backlash from the public over seeming to laugh at men's issues. The very idea that there could be men's issues, right, to discuss in Parliament. And then when he brought up, suicide and all of that stuff, right? Then she said, well, men, looks to me like men can talk about anything they want here, and every day is International Men's Day, and when I have parity in Parliament, you can have your debate, right? Which is just so fucking arrogant. And and that was what really, like, when that went viral, that was when, and I remember her and Philip Davies side by side in front of a reporter, standing out on the street in front of Westminster, right, talking about it, and her saying, well, yes, I totally acknowledge that men have issues and that men have problems, and blah 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 with this, that, and the other, right? And him saying, well, and I look forward to you not continuing to block the debate. Yeah, so it was because of a public backlash. That's the only reason why.
Well, of course, then they want to make it so the public can't backlash in this way anymore, so they can lock down the debate.
Oh yeah.
And like I said, even if the BBC brings up male suicide, if they do it in the context of the modern medical health industry or toxic masculinity, then they're exacerbating the problem. So in my opinion, they're only bringing it up because they don't think there's enough of it.
Well, I'm not gonna they're that ill-willed. I'll just say they're misguided. That they think, dog, shut up. That they think that somehow perpetuating a narrative that men are horrible and are responsible for every evil all through history, but you can't pat them on the back for all of the male achievement and male accomplishment that's occurred through history that has brought us to where we are today, right? That you can't appreciate men as men for what men do, and not all men are up in cherry pickers fixing power lines, and not all men are down in sewers unclogging, picking freaking used condoms and used tampons and shit off of the grates that put the water into the processing plants to be cleaned and reintroduced to the water system, right? Not all men are doing those things, right? Not all men are innovators and entrepreneurs and bringing us things like iPhones and the internet. Not all men are doing that, but the people who are doing that are mostly men. Let's just put that on the table right now, right? The people who are keeping the lights on, the water running, and the planes from falling out of the sky are mostly men. And, when I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, we're not allowed to appreciate them for that, right? Because of some false narrative of history, right? Where essentially the story, the fairy tale is that, women were all living in comfort and peace in their own land, and then men came in and colonized them, and like took them over and enslaved them all.
And then the men's nation attacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like that's literally kind of what they believe. And it's like that's certainly the impression that people get, you know, when I hear people, not just the Cenk Uyghurs of the world, but other people saying, well, men withheld the vote from women for like, you know, ages and ages, right? Unjustly. And it's like, well, have you thought about this and this and this and this and this? And also the fact that most women didn't want the vote and adamantly opposed it. In fact, they actually had incidents where pollsters would go door to door asking women if they wanted suffrage. And in many cases, these people were chased away by the women householders with violence because they thought they were coming from a suffragette society. Right? It was like, get the fuck out of here with your bullshit. Right?
Yeah.
Is anybody even aware of? No,
Well,
it
I
was
think
the
they're aware
brave
now.
women who overcame the evil men. And does anybody know that women's suffrage was introduced as a topic in Parliament in 1885? That's when only 60-something% of men had the vote, and half of them only had the vote by accident, by a loophole. Right? The reason that half of those men had the vote was because they lowered property restrictions. So they lowered the amount of property you had to own. And as long as you had a property tax account and were paying taxes on that property, right, you could vote. Well, so landlords, what did they do? They said, well, here's a way I can make my tenants pay my property taxes. Go open a property tax account and pay the property taxes in addition to your rent if you want the right to vote. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, and nobody actually considers all of these intricate
Nobody
details
does.
about the history of the right
Nobody
to vote,
does.
or
No
even
one.
like the fact that men's vote, they had to get, there was a bloody history to get the men to get the right to vote.
Yeah.
who weren't like an aristocracy.
Yeah, the
and it's
Chartists in the UK, like their leaders were sentenced to death for treason and sedition. They were sentenced to life in prison. Most of them died in prison. They were exiled to Tasmania, right? Oh, what did the suffragettes have happen? Oh, for their acts of domestic terrorism. They served some time and were force-fed when they went on a hunger strike. And then when the media went all fucking apeshit over that and how cruel it was, they were all released.
This reminds me of something that I've been talking to, I guess, a pro-abortion individual on Twitter, very, very briefly, because I'm pretty sure she blocked me after she never responded to my tweet.
Oh, this fucking woman! Oh my god!
Yeah, no. So she was saying men should have no right to vote on women's bodies, and I told her, I said, you realize that if it were up to men, you would be more likely to have your abortion rights unassailed. The men would be more likely to give you your abortion rights than if you kept it up to women. The reason why there is this question, or the reason why there is this debate, is because there are women who do not want you to have the right to have an abortion. So this is not about men stopping you. It's about other women who have their own opinion about their bodies, and they don't want you to have that particular choice over your body, which, and they don't want it because they think that you're killing a child, and that is, it is a position that is legitimate in and of itself. And she just stopped talking to me after I said, if it were just up to men, you would have the right to have an abortion.
Oh yeah, no, it's like, and every time I ask, right, who would you rather have sitting deciding your abortion rights? Would you like Bill Clinton, Al Franken, and Barack Obama? Or would you prefer Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin, and Ann Coulter?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she had no response to that. And it's probably the same true about the vote, too. If it had been up to men, women would probably have gotten the vote much earlier. But it wasn't up to men. It was sort of also up to their wives and mothers and sisters and daughters and female friends and whatever, who probably we're pressuring them, saying, no, we don't want that, because there is significant evidence that there was a significant body of women who didn't, and they of course exerted political influence. And then we look back in history and we blame the men.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
You
we
know,
don't just blame them, we blame the boys being born today who had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do
with it. Yeah.
You know, and it's just unspeakable. But anyway, so that's why don't we just play that Rogan clip really quick and then
it's almost 9 o'clock and I have an after show set up and my wife wants to read that thing.
Okay. All right. Well, I figure it's the only time we're ever going to get to it.
I have never heard you that whiny, Brian.
I'm not whining. I'm just like, it's not feasible.
Just your tone. Your tone was a little bit, but I understand. I get it. Yeah.
I don't want the sausage to be long. I mean, yesterday's show was 4 hours, and so I'm trying to work within, what is reasonable. If we were gonna do the
discussion of this is probably going to take longer than just how long is the clip?
Okay,
it's
just
it's
stop.
like 5 minutes. Let me just go.
Wait, no, let's. Oh my God.
Hold on.
It's not 5 minutes. It's not 5 minutes. Like he basically says this thing and then he just screws himself over in the next couple seconds of what he says.
Yeah.
And as long as we can get right to it, then it should be fine.
And it helped me actually develop this one piece that I was doing. And that it rounded out this one piece I was doing because I was trying to figure out a way that I could explain it to someone who might have a preconceived notion about who I am, to say it in a way that makes people that were hesitant laugh. You know what I mean? Versus.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just pausing for the banana there. So somebody else want to just say something?
Okay,
yeah, it's gonna be fun. This is gonna be fun. Let's do it.
Savages at 11:30 on a Saturday night that are hammered.
Yeah, so Whitney Cummings' crowd wasn't into your anti-feminist.
They laughed because the punchline was good, and I had a place to go with it, and the place to go was ultimately mocking men's rights activists. That was the real thing. Was the setup for that joke is I don't like anybody's into one thing, and I go, but what drives me the most fucking crazy is men's rights activists. I'm like, every men's rights activist I ever met, I just want to grab them and go, dude, we got them all.
Yeah,
we got all the rights.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just pausing it there again for the banana.
No, you don't, Joe.
Well,
you fucking
Karen,
don't.
let it.
You don't have to.
You can't rebut him better than he rebuts himself.
Yeah, he'll rebut himself. It's okay. But one thing I do want to say about Toe Rogan is it's actually really interesting, Joe, that you actually have to make jokes criticizing MRAs, a group of people that you don't have to fear, in order to take a little bit of the edge off so that the feminists don't eat you alive in the audience. Just think about that for a second, that you basically can do that. You can say, you know what, I'll attack these guys, and then the feminists will like me because I don't want them to be my enemy. Think about that. Who has the power in that situation, Joe? Who has the power in that particular dynamic?
Who's wearing the strap on, Joe?
Yes. Okay, let's hear more of Toe Rogan.
Yeah, we got them all.
I can't believe that's a real thing. Men's rights activists.
That's because you're a fucking idiot. Okay, moving on.
It's a real thing if you get divorced and you have child. It's for child custody. Those things are real. Like guys, really, I know men who have gotten really fucked over in divorce.
Oh, you think? You think your best buddy Dave Foley might have got fucked over with his $28,000 a month of child support plus alimony, right? That he was assigned when he divorced in Ontario from a woman who apparently only ever had sex with him when she wanted to have a baby through their entire marriage, right? So I don't know. I don't know whether Terrence Popp could do the math on that and find out how many meters of penis he got into her vagina, measuring by thrust, average number of thrusts per sexual encounter, right? And figure out exactly how much per inch of cock he had to pay, okay, at the end of that marriage, which ended right at the height of his career. It was right when Phil Hartman was killed by his fucking wife.
Yeah, we're getting to that. Phil Hartman, murdered by his wife.
murdered by his
men have
fucking
all the
wife,
rights,
right? His freaking co-star Phil Hartman murdered by his wife. That's when the show started to lose ratings, and that's when she just chose it. The show's at its peak. It's like, now it's time to divorce this guy and milk him for everything he's got. And so now, like, for 10 years, he couldn't step foot in Canada. For 10 fucking years, he couldn't put a foot in Canada because he owed so much back alimony and back child support because his career ended when news radio was canceled. Or it didn't end. It just took a significant step down, right? And the Ontario court judges refused to reduce his freaking obligation, right? He went back and he went back and he went back and said, I can't earn this amount of money. I have to pay an agent 15% on everything I earn, right? I'm paying as much as I can, sometimes $20,000 a month. And I'm left with like $2,000 a month to live on. Like, what the fuck is going on? And the judge kept saying, who the fuck cares? Go out and earn it. Go out and earn it. Like, honestly, no matter where you get married in Canada, the place you do not want to get divorced is Ontario, right? That is the place you do not, as a man, want to get divorced. And so anytime he put his foot in Canada, he would be risking being picked up at the fucking airport, put in jail. And this is what his ex-wife wanted, and this is what the courts granted her. Okay, you owe over $500,000 in back child support and alimony, and what we're going to do is, if you show up in Canada again, we're going to arrest you, we're going to put you in prison, we're going to continue to accrue your debt while you're in there and unable to pay because you're in jail, right? And then in 6 months, we'll revisit it and we'll ask for the money, and if you can't come up with it, you're going back to prison. And we're just going to do that until you're dead. That was what his friend Dave Foley went through.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
but men's rights is like laughable.
Yeah, they have all the rights. And again, he agrees. He agrees that men's rights, like, they have a point. He agrees. But when he was on that comedy show that night, he had to bash us because he didn't want to piss off the feminists.
Well, of course, because, throw your friends under the bus, Joe Rogan.
Well, I wouldn't say that
he's...
bus. Yeah, he'll throw men's rights. I don't think he's our friends because he hasn't had any on. But
no. I'm talking about his friends.
He's not throwing Dave bus. He's actually saying, yeah, divorce and child.
No, but he's throwing him under the bus by saying, well, yeah, this is something that exists, but don't agitate for an end to it.
Yeah.
Like, don't actually make it an issue. My friend dealt with this horrible thing, but we shouldn't actually stop this horrible thing from happening. That is throwing your friend under the bus. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's throwing your friend under the bus in order to kiss. Not even in a sexual sense, but in order to submit yourself to women that you aren't even going to have sex with. You're just submitting yourself. I mean, these women aren't even pegging you, Joe Rogan. They're not even freaking pegging you. You're just submitting to them for nothing.
Yeah.
Not even to receive their dildos in your ass. You're just submitting to them for no fucking reason. Then that's what you do. You lie down like a mat. And you let them step all over you. And I must say that after coming off of Sargon, Joe Rogan is looking like a real simp right now. Because Sargon's sitting there and he is fighting for these issues in a place, like Karen was saying. He's taking the hard road. He's taking the road of a real man. While Joe Rogan gets up on stage, turns around, drops trow to the feminists and says, I have a little puckered daisy for ya. Get your strap-ons out. And furthermore, because I'm not done. Furthermore, what you're essentially saying is men have all of the rights except when women don't want them to. And that is the fucking point.
Mm-hmm.
But excuse me, you got to be pegged by a bunch of feminists, so I don't want to get in the way of that. You obviously enjoy it. Okay.
All right.
I don't think any of us are ever going to go on that show now.
Somebody should make a video called Joe Rogan versus Joe Rogan on men's rights. Just use this clip That's all you'll need. You just have him say this, and then you mirror it so he's like the other way, and you have him retort himself. And then just put that out there. I think that'd be great. Okay, so we're gonna go into the after show. We can like hang out with the patrons. I know that Lindsay wants to share something with you guys she's been thinking about, and that her and I have been talking about, and I think that could be fun. So do you want to like walk us out, Allison?
I don't know. Like I'm feeling like really fucking jumped up. Jumping beans.
I'm watching my dogs fight inside the crate. Borat's winning because the mobility is limited.
Oh, because he's small, so he can move around.
Yeah, he's small and agile, and they're stuck in the. Okay, hey.
All right, I think that
Watch
Karen
it.
needs to deal with that. I thought you
Jesus.
were actually like muted because you're like, oh my god, Allison, what the hell are you doing? But
No,
anyway,
no,
all right. No, I'll talk us out. All right.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm actually really liking Sargon more and more and more. The fact that he's standing up for these issues, and Karen, you're right, Karen. He had a much more easier. He could have gone a much more easier route, but he went the route of bringing attention to men's issues.
Yeah, he actually does it every chance he gets now. He's like, and like you said, he's like an MRA Trojan horse. And I think part of it has to do with the conversation he had with Mike, our Mike Stevenson, when he said, you know, that being an MRA does not require you to call yourself an MRA. It only requires you to act. And but that was when Sargon was saying, why don't you guys change your brand? And he was like, that's pointless. We may as well just go on doing what we're doing. And then he accepted that he was wrong about that. And now he's just advocating when it makes sense. And so I'm not saying he's an MRA because I don't care. The point is, he is talking about this stuff. And he didn't have to. He didn't have to talk about male suicide on this particular segment at all. He could have just stuck to defending himself against tweets that he made, you know, and just like fight the media. But he ended on, when are we going to talk about male suicide?
Yeah,
and then that
and it doesn't matter that he doesn't say I'm an MRA.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't matter that he throws, you know, he says anything about who we are or what we do or any of that. That doesn't fucking matter. The label is irrelevant. It's the action. And I just have to say to Joe Rogan, it is the most beta. I don't even want to say it's the most amazing thing to do. The most cuck thing to do is to shit on another guy to make yourself feel better. It is that entire sequence of your cowardice, your abject sniveling cowardice. I wonder if we're going to lose a whole bunch of subscribers. Your abject sniveling cowardice in the face of women. It is, and the fact that you would throw other men under the bus, including your own friends, because you're essentially saying, well, yeah, these are issues, but don't agitate them for them, even though my friends suffer from them. The fact you would do that. I don't normally do this, but I am taking away your man card. You are not a man, Rogan.
Oh my, you know, she doesn't.
You're not even a woman. You're a receptacle for somebody's fucking dildo.
Oh my.
That's okay. You want me to lead this out?
Amazing.
I can lead this too. All right. Okay, so if you like our content, please go
if you enjoyed this show,
please consider supporting us so that we can continue to create content just like this.
Like this.
Oh my goodness. www.feedthebadger.com. Thank you. I don't know what else to say. Good night. You've been a great audience.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. It's
interesting.
Yeah, for real. Okay, so we're gonna go. Thanks, guys, for coming on. Be sure to hit like, subscribe, comment, and hit the bell for notifications. And yeah, that's about it. We're gonna go to the after show. See you guys later. Have a good night, everybody.